15 years now of buying gold and silver. How is it going for me? Would I do it again? What would I change? And what would I say about it to a friend? Well, I will tell you, but the first round's on you. People tend to dial in on gold and silver when there's a clear crisis with potential wide implications, and it's happening right now. The banking crisis, that has people looking for ways, places to park some savings outside the industry. Now, if you do any amount of research, you're going to come across the idea of holding gold or silver, or both. And if the price movement at the time were to support that idea, like it's doing right now, the price is going up, so it seems like a good idea. Well, that becomes a little bit of a confirmation of sorts. For me, when I came in, we had the crisis, but we didn't have the price run. It was 2008, we had the financial crisis. It took a few years before the prices shot up. So I came in during a panic, but I wasn't panicking personally. It might have had a little bit to do with the price at the time. I started this channel in 2020 when the new panic was setting in, and I thought maybe I could give a few tips on what to buy and then maybe point out a few pitfalls to avoid. And a big one of those was just getting caught up in the fear of missing out. It's a swell that's pretty easy to get caught up in when you can actually see that gold price is directly affected by the same fear that has you tuning in the first place. You can actually see gold price move on market sentiment where it falls on the fear and greed scale. So when the market's freaking out, when the risk aversion is high, the price of gold is going up. And any story of potential catastrophe feels more real based on the evidence of increased buying and higher prices. So in other words, a lot of people come into gold and silver in periods of relative panic. Now, I mentioned that I'm on my 15th year of buying now. That means that I saw the 2011 price spikes in gold and silver, particularly in silver, and I saw the 2013 drop. And then, of course, I've been closely tuned in since 2020 as well. I've had a channel since then. The catalysts of 2008 and the catalysts of 2020, they're very different. And the catalyst last year in 2022, well, that was different too. The catalyst this year, different again. But in all of these cases, there have at least been pretty clear patterns. And what I'll tell you after buying and selling both gold and silver for 15 years is that precious metals are not a magic route to financial freedom. And that's coming from somebody who's obviously a fan of them. I have a YouTube channel focused on this stuff and I hold a fair amount, but it's probably fair to say though that not everyone needs gold and silver. And that's not financial advice. I'm not qualified to give it. I don't think anyone should take financial advice from gold or silver channels. This is simply my take on the subject from a personal perspective, whether or not I do it again, past, present, future, and what I might tell to a friend or family member about it. The spoiler here is that I would do it again. I'm pretty clear on that. Friends, family, they would be a case-by-case call. Now, I enjoy it, so that makes it very easy for me to save with it personally, and I like it enough to buy it rather than, say, wasting money on things I don't need. Price spikes, they don't push me to buy more. Price drops, they don't scare me to sell. But I'm not sure that all my friends and family would have that same perspective. So just generally speaking, I would say anyone sticking to a scheduled buying plan will find that over time, it becomes significant. It has become a very practical and relatively significant backup plan for me. Now, if I ran into a major emergency, I'd have enough gold built up to allow a decent runway for me and my family to get back on our feet. And I think that everyone would like to have that. There are just a lot of considerations in play here. Opportunity cost is a big one to consider. If you're buying gold or silver rather than dumb things that you don't need, well, there's very little downside. But if you're buying it instead of investing in growth assets, well, then it's a harder call. In my personal case, I did not buy gold or silver with any money that I had set aside for investments. And I think that's important. In my early 30s, when I started, I was wasting money and I was paying bills. I had less discretionary income, so what I did was I carved out a monthly budget from subscriptions that I didn't need, some money I was already spending, I stopped, and I did a few things to kick off a little bit more in passive income. So my gold and silver purchases, they've never really affected my take-home pay. Now, I could have used that money in other ways, but I didn't cut into what I would call normal operating expense. And like I mentioned, it never prevented me from investing. To me, that part is just really important because if I was to compare the total gains of my gold and silver to the gains of some of those investments that I made in my early 30s, well, my metals wouldn't look very good. My Apple stock, for instance, that has outperformed my gold and silver exponentially. Now, if I compared that instead to spending cash that has come and gone over the years, well, I still have the gold and the silver. It has appreciated in value, but I've burned plenty of cash, and that's all worth zero. So if you think of metals as savings that you're not going to need for everyday expenses, maybe you'll never need it at all, maybe you'll hand it down to your kids. Well, from that perspective, gold and silver can be pretty great. They've definitely worked out well for me. Now, there are a few things that I would change if I could go back. Mostly it's a detail here or there, so let's just get those out of the way first. So one thing that I've noticed over time is that I calculate my total holdings in ounces. And if there's a waste in buying, I would say that it's in high premium. So as much as I enjoy a few of my nicer coins, the excitement that I get from buying something different, well, it almost always wears off. I have a handful of coins that I paid more for that I would probably buy again, but I found that I much prefer a tube of one thing over a pile of random things. And had I stuck to my plan for those 2 or maybe 3 things, well, I would have more ounces today. And this is a good example of this. This is a 2021 High Relief Gold Liberty. It came with the 50% premium, and I couldn't time the purchase, meaning I couldn't buy it when the price of gold was low. So I could have 1.5 ounces of gold instead had I just bought when it made more sense. Now, I might buy this one again, but it's probably only because I have a YouTube channel. This one, it shows up on my spreadsheet as a single ounce of gold. It just has an asterisk. And that means that even though I know it has value, I also know that I'm going to have to spend more time with it if I ever want to get that back out. Now, the opposite's true as well. Paying less for a coin, well, that hasn't done much for me either. The excitement of low prices fades over time too. I've picked some up at a discount, coins that I don't normally buy because maybe they were $20, maybe $40 cheaper than what I typically grab. But that feeling that I saved $1, it just always wears off quickly too. And I'm pretty sure that I've given back any of that savings by now anyway. I've sold off my Krugerrands, my Britannias, even some Maples recently to consolidate back a little bit. I've sold Isle of Man coins, some Series 1 Lunars over the years too. I still have a few things like this Proof Buffalo that maybe I thought was fun at the time. I felt like it was a deal because I got it for the same price as a BU Buffalo. But today, I would really just rather have what I normally buy. And the only reason that I hold on to this one is just that it looks good on camera. The more important part of this, by far, comes from the basic intrinsic value of it all. Those details of what I'm buying, how I feel about anything that deviates from plan. It's pretty minor, and they're specific to me. I would steer clear of most of those deviations just to make things a lot easier, but the far more important part is simply what building up a stack of metals can do for you. I mentioned this earlier. I could subsidize a few years of expenses by selling down a few ounces of gold each month, but I've never had to cut into savings in any substantial way to buy the gold to be in that position. There have been times where maybe I felt like I was behind, maybe I needed to catch up, but I've mostly resisted that feeling and just stuck to buying with income that wasn't already earmarked for anything else, anything important. And because of that, I don't have any significant regret. Now, if there's one thing that I'll say though, there is a reason that I focus on gold on this channel. I've just done much better with my gold purchases than I have with my silver purchases over the years. And outside advice on silver has been wildly inaccurate along the way. So just like I've cut way back on my silver purchases these days, I don't think that I'd be buying much of it if I was starting over right now. Maybe it'll come around, but the spike and then the collapse of silver that kicked off in 2011, alongside just a consistently higher premium, they made me careful about silver. And once again, it's not advice, it's just simply the difference that I've come to experience over the years between those two metals. Both, I would say, were a good way to save for me. Silver simply had a much higher acquisition cost, that's due to premium, and then a much lower appreciation based on when I was buying and the price movement inside that time frame. So to the question of whether it's worth buying gold and silver, well, it's definitely been worth it to me with that specific plan that I mentioned. Not giving up investment capital in my younger years, not going crazy, and not rushing in every time the market panics. And I think if you follow similar plans, it could be a good thing for you too. I think that's an objective take. Just clearing away all the popular noise of the hour, just looking at it from the perspective of what it has amounted to versus the effort it took to get there. And hopefully that helps. I don't have anything to gain either way, but I just know how nice it is to be able to get the perspective from somebody who's been at it for a while before you come in. So let's call it good there. I know some of you out there have been at this a lot longer than I have. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new, well, let us know if anything has been different for you. It'd be good to get a few more angles. So hit us up in the comments. And then while you're there, be sure to hit the like button if you found any of this interesting. Be sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on if you'd like to see more on the topic. And if you're still here, thanks again for watching. I always appreciate your time. Take care.